Good day, everybody. It's SHAMEELA SOOBRAMONEY, and I'm the CEO of the National Business Initiative. A bit about the National Business Initiative, or the NBI, is an organization that was formed 28 years ago, specifically looking at how business can play a role in the transformation of the country and ensuring that business has a strong role to play in both the social, environmental, and economic growth trajectory that the country was going to play. It was mandated into existence by then President Nelson Mandela, who felt strongly that business had a strong role to play in this area, and so it needed to organize itself in a manner that would allow it to be forward-thinking and get ahead of the curve in playing a role in ensuring that we had a transition that was supported by business and that where business explicitly considered our social and environmental issues. And since then, the NBI has been involved in a number of initiatives that look at, in turn, environmental issues. And we have an entire environmental portfolio that includes biodiversity, water, energy, and the like. Economic inclusion, which is really looking at how do we get the right skills where they are partnering with the likes of TVET College, and is actually the official arm of the President Youth Employment Initiative's installation, repair, and maintenance program that is housed here and that partners across the country with a number of different institutions and looking at development and growth in relation to the right skilling as well as township economies. And then a unit looking at social transformation on gender equality and inclusion. And finally, one called TAMDEV, which is actually technical assistance, mentorship, and development, focused on helping to capacitate the state and bringing private sector resources to work alongside the state to help achieve that and get the skills that we need at the right places and to support and work together with the state in that regard. Reaching net zero emissions and building a green economy is really important for the goals of the NBI. The work that we have done over the last number of years, and in particular, I will refer to the Just Transition Pathways work, which is freely available on our website, has really undertaken to understand whether, firstly, is net zero possible for an economy like ours, with the structure that it has, the sectors that we have, and what we have in terms of context, both economically and socially as a country. Not only is it possible, we have found, but that actually green industrialization could be net jobs positive and better for the environment than the trajectory we find ourselves on currently. So that, I think, is a critical component where we're seeing that we can actually achieve the aims of social development that we need to have, as well as those of environmental preservation and the transition to net zero in a manner that can be positive all around. Of course, that is premised on the right action, on the supportive policies and the enabling environment that could be created to ensure that that transition happens, and we realize that potential dividend of being both net jobs positive as well as environmentally positive, and ensuring that a society as a whole actually is far more included than we have been up to now. In relation to focusing on local content and upskilling and reskilling our workforce, again, the outcomes of the work that we did on the Just Transition Pathways very clearly says that part of being able to achieve what I mentioned before in relation to creating those jobs, being net job positive, is actually looking across the line on how we can better industrialize the value chain in relation to renewables in particular, and every component of that, including battery, including manufacturing of different components and the like. That requires a very specific plan that supports those industries, that supports research and development, and is able to help us locate where the best place is to place these facilities, and to be able to ensure that we have the support from a skilling perspective for the workforce that can do that. This requires both the development of SMEs as well as the support of established businesses and larger businesses to be able to come together and ensure that. Ideally, we would want SMEs playing in the value chains of larger businesses, and those larger businesses using their considerable resources and experience to be able to support the development and growth of those SMEs. We know many times over that it has been stated that really the growth engine of our economy is going to be vibrant SMEs going into the future. And so we need to be able to do everything that we can to support that. But of course, we can do that even better by leveraging the enormous resources that none of the developed businesses have, and in many cases are going to be off-takers of what we can get supplied via SMEs. And then ultimately, we'd like to see those SMEs growing into the green giants or the industrial giants of the future. Skills are going to be critical in that regard. So the skills are not done completely independently, of course. We need to understand which are the sectors that we have the best prospects in for growth in relation to this, and the battery value chain is certainly a critical one of those. As we look to moving into renewables, the need for battery storage is critical, and hence developing that battery value chain is clearly an important piece of what we would need to do. Skills, like I said, are not developed in isolation. So the plans in order to enable us to have a vibrant and thriving battery value chain economically need to be put in place, including the incentives, the research and development that allow us to do that. And then, of course, we ensure that we have the appropriate skills that are there to meet that demand as that demand develops. It does then presuppose that we have a view on how that demand is going to be developing, what the skills need is going to be in the shorter term, the medium term, and the longer term, and that we put in place the right educational interventions to be able to meet those demands where they're needed at the appropriate points in time. This is a whole new set of sectors that we're looking at that can leverage off, of course, existing knowledge base in engineering, manufacturing, and the like, but also new sets of skills that we have the opportunity to look at. The benefit, of course, is that we're in an age now where learning can be really ramped up in relation to the technology that's available to us now, that learning can be wider spread, can permeate far further than it has, and we have the view of being able to say we've got the experience of other countries that are moving ahead in some of that, being able to take that, tailor-make that for what it is, and ensure that we make those facilities available in areas that have previously maybe been excluded, which gets us a better chance of ensuring that the transition we need to make is more inclusive and goes a long way to achieving the objectives of a more just transition. In terms of the shorter term focus or the nearer term focus for the transition, I think the word transition really is the operative. And when we think about that, we need to consider broadly what our economy looks like. So we do have a number of jobs that are exposed to the coal value chain at this point in time. And so the energy transition, we can presuppose that we understand that those jobs will be at risk and that the transition needs to very carefully understand what that means. On the other hand, if we're moving to a green economy, we know things like critical minerals, for example, are essential. So what are we doing to be able to get the right skills in mining and the like to ensure that we're able to access those critical minerals, beneficiate and do what we need to do to make sure that we translate that into economic growth and development, the jobs that we want, and to be able to bring that into our economy. Those are things that are going to be necessary. So while we look at coal on one hand, and we need to create opportunities for employment in those areas so that workers can feel like there's something for them to look forward to and that there actually is a transition for them in a work perspective, we also need to consider that there's this other development that needs to happen, is that then how can we use that opportunity to understand what skills are going to be needed, for example, in critical minerals, in being able to get what we need to be able to get those minerals required to create those batteries and to do all of those things that will enable the transition. So I do think the short-term focus is going to understand where those jobs are located, give real work and growth prospects to those workers that will be affected in the growth value chain, in the coal value chain, as well as create prospects within the beneficiation of those critical minerals and the shift to the more greater focus on those. And as we know, those minerals are going to be essential to power a transition. Thank you.